Welcome to Conspiracy Cafe. I'm your host, George Freund. We're with you now. We're with you to the end. We hope the end is a long, long way off. The Google Doodles tell us they're coming a little bit sooner. Anyway, it's been a very, very active day to try to get the show prepped for today with this new code to break. We're really happy we could do it in a very short period of time. We get better and better and better at it. We're also doing a unique little switch around to come in on Tuesday, so it won't really matter for people who come Thursday anyway, but it makes a whole big difference to me because I can enjoy my 2 days off in the middle of the week. Don't get much vacation. I think I had one in 2008 as memory serves me, and I just work like a slave on this show because somebody's got to do it. As one of the old presidents used to say, the buck stops here. That was Harry Truman. I don't get the bucks too much to stop here, but responsibility stops here. Somebody's got to say it. Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to try to derail the New World Order where they can. It's like there's just a never-ending mountain of knowledge that comes my way, even just some of it very benign. Like I associate a lot with, a former Air Canada pilot who was an executive in their pilots union. There's a lot of controversies still go on in the Air Canada pilots union. One of them today just smacks you in the head for 9/11, because no one would ever have thought in their wildest nightmares that something like this would happen. How the story goes is you're in a unionized shop. Pilots are very well paid. They make a ton of dough. When one books off sick, generally in a collective bargaining situation, they replace you with another qualified pilot. And it's usually done by seniority, so usually you're getting the guys at the top of the tree. Well, Air Canada came up with a great idea. They came out with something called like an assistant pilot. You're a licensed pilot, but you're not a regular pilot with the airline. You get your basic minimum to get your pilot's license, and the law says you have to have 2 licensed pilots. So one of them is a career, bet your life on the guy pilot, and the other guy is somebody who's just got like a couple of hundred hours at flight school. Part of that scenario is they're not trained to take off or to land the airplane. So when we go back in time to the training that the so-called Muslim terrorists were taking, and the media jumping all over us, saying that alarm bells should have been sounding because they're training pilots who don't want to, or who aren't interested in getting takeoff and landing training. Well, I'm sure if Air Canada's doing it today, probably some of the other global airlines were doing it a few years back to cut costs. Yes, you have a license. You know what that gauge is for. You know what that gauge is for. And when that bell rings, you know what that's for. And then you elbow the pilot and you tell him to take over the plane. So there was nothing unusual about a guy taking lessons without learning how to take off or to land. And it's like I told this retired pilot, oh, I don't care so much that he can't take off, but I really like to know he can land the plane. Because if we can't take off, well, that's not such a big deal. We'll just go back to the terminal and have a coffee and wait for something else. But if you can't land, it's game over. So I thought that was rather unique. And it also just shows you like the just bizarre attitude of the bean counters in big corporations, that they couldn't give a damn about your life. That they're going to send you up in a plane. It's not so much that you don't know how to fly it, but one of the big things is you only learned maybe how to fly local. So the only place you know with some degree of skill perhaps is the area where you got your license. So say that's the Toronto area. What do you do when you got to fly to Alberta or Albuquerque or Paris or something like that? You've never seen those places before. Maybe you've never been over the Atlantic, or it's your second or third time. You haven't felt certain types of turbulence or wind, and one of the biggest ones he laughed at was if you had to fly to the Arctic. That's a whole new ball game, period, and even the most experienced pilots have to relearn their skills to fly in the Arctic. But your few hundred-hour wonder, he can be the backup pilot any old time at all to go anywhere. That's just absolutely insane and absolutely bizarre, and I don't think mainstream media wants to touch that one with a 10-foot pole because they hate poking the big corporations with a stick, especially the ones that may advertise on their media. But I would be very, very concerned if I got somebody like that being the extra pilot on a big plane that doesn't know how to take off and doesn't know how to land and has never been out of his hometown. Whew. They don't serve the drinks on board as freely as before either, I think. President Sarkozy had his little election stunt, and maybe even with stuffing the ballot box, he didn't do so well, so they have to have a runoff election. It's going to be not a sure thing for him. He's going to have to try a little harder the next time. The bad news is Francois Hollande, the socialist candidate, is the other up-and-coming big runner, and we always make these mistakes. We go from like the hardcore fascist to the Marxist-Leninist. The whole reason we're in trouble, of course, is Marx's Communist Manifesto, and when you elect a socialist, he has no problem borrowing tons of money. And that's why the capitalist bankers have always supported the so-called communists or socialists to a great extent, because they know they're going to come running all the time to go and say, can we have some more? Can we have some more? Of course they're going to get some more. We did a little bit last week on some of the strange dealings with the murders in Paris, the Google Doodles at the time. One of the other little stories that came out of this, not a little story for the man it happened to, Jerome Murau, a lawyer in Paris, he got blowed up. So seemingly he opened a box that he got from a friend who was sending him an inert grenade, and it wasn't inert, and it blew up and took off his arm and killed him. And a lot of the stuff about his life has kind of come off the internet, been taken away. Even his own website was tampered with a little bit, so you couldn't see a lot of the things he'd been working on. But we just wonder, if I had to take a shot in the dark, if he worked on that so-called suspect in the shootings in France, the guy who'd been in trouble 6 times with the law, Yanni P. You wonder, could he have represented him, or did he have knowledge of some of the banking fiascos, or where money's going in the European Union, or the dry goods on Sarkozy? It's hard to say, but it just seems really weird. You know, they paint him as some kind of weapons expert or collector of militaria. That's just a whole new facet. It's like antique military stuff. That's quite a genre of collecting. It's very popular in England and around the world, really. There's a niche for it here in Canada and in the United States. So militaria can include all sorts of things. But the big thing is, almost for anyone with the slightest degree of cognitive reasoning to tell an inert grenade from a non-inert grenade, because when they take out the top, they replace it with a piece of plastic, usually, and you can immediately tell that the top is plastic and not metal. The other thing is, grenades aren't made to, they're made to be carried and used, and in roughneck stuff. The army guys carry them, they're running and jumping and crawling and all that sort of thing. You don't want them blowing up your own men, so they're relatively safe to carry until you pull the pin out. And the spring comes off and it detonates, but it takes a few seconds to do that. So that's why I'm surprised that this chap was killed. I would more speculate that the grenade came in the box as a sabotage weapon, where the pin was already pulled and just left lying in the box. The box was closed around the clip, so when he pulled the box apart, the clip springs, kablooey. Maybe they even changed the timing to instant, because usually you have a 3 to 5 second delay so you can throw the bloody thing. So even if he picked it up and he thought it was inert and he pulled the pin, he should have felt the priming charge plunger go inside the grenade, and then realized this is a hot potato. You still got 3 to 5 seconds to throw it away. But unfortunately, didn't work. And this chap bit the dust. One of the big things we have to do to fight the New World Order is you have to take the initiative. You have to do something. Life isn't a spectator sport. We've been trained with that, I guess, maybe from watching too much TV. It's everything entertainment. You don't do anything. You just watch. Participatory democracy is only democracy if you participate. If you just sit on your duff and don't do anything, well, that's all you're going to get back is nothing. So as a surprise, surprise, this woman from Saturday Night Live, Victoria Jackson, starting to figure out things aren't going too well. That America is moving towards communism and socialism, or fascism. It's all the same thing. The only difference between a communist and a fascist is the color of his shirt. The caliber of his gun is still the same. The hole it's going to make in your head is still the same. But the government is increasingly taking things over at every nook and cranny. One of the big things she concentrates on, of course, is global warming, Agenda 21 and such like that. But the most important thing is she woke up. In the old days, when Waco happened, that's what we used to call it, waking up, Waco up. The government came in with tanks and just blew this place to smithereens and killed everybody inside, including children. That's what the big game's going to be about down the road. So a lot of people woke up. Then there was the explosion in the Murrah building, Oklahoma City, that was another one. And that expression was still Waco up. Randy Weaver, the fact that his wife was shot holding her infant child in her arms, splattered all over creation by your benign, friendly neighborhood government. Waco up. A lot of you already woke up, but we still have to keep doing something every chance. So of course, in this book, or this article, this woman remembers reading George Orwell's prophetic fiction, 1984, about this takeover. Another good bit of reference material, because this is like their textbook, along with a few others. Then one of the other little anecdotes, Agent 99 picked up this article for me, another murder case linked to illegal phone hacking. It's a year-old article, but they even make point in here. Clarence Mitchell, the spokesman for the parents of Madeleine McCann, said he has been interviewed by detectives following evidence of attempts to obtain details about his mobile phone in 2008. So they were spying on their representative, as well as so many other people. They also get into the fact that another gentleman, Stuart Campbell, was convicted of killing his niece, a 15-year-old schoolgirl who was never found, disappeared in 2001. He was convicted of the murder in 2002, relied on evidence relating to text messages sent from her phone, which could be completely and totally made up. They didn't just stop with the victims or the people they wanted to frame. A former Deputy Assistant Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police is alleged to have had his phone details collected as early as 2002. That was Brian Paddock. Colin Stagg, the man wrongly accused of the murder of Rachel Nichol, may have been targeted by News of the World in 2000. So this is just a long, strenuous attack. In Glenn Mulcair's notebook, they find 91 people had their voicemail pins logged by him. 4,332 names or partial names were found in his records. That is just absolutely devastating. But there's something else that nobody connects the dots with too much. But when you look at all this material and you keep looking at it, collecting more and more dots, this article, shady companies with ties to Israel wiretap the U.S. for the National Security Agency. So we've talked about the National Security Agency, we've talked about their new echelon, the way they're going to listen to anyone and everyone. Well, it turns out one of the companies they use to set up their Orwellian system, codename Stellar Wind, was called Technology Development Corporation, a really fly-by-night outfit that operated out of the guy's house with his brother, who had all kinds of misfit problems. And then a lot of other problems of financial things, like the brother kept taking all the money from the company and spending it, and his brother had to sue him. These are the people that set up Stellar Wind, that are going to spy on the whole world and have access to all the data of anything, everyone, everywhere, every time. You've got to be kidding. But one of the little sidebars in this is, of course, the technology that was developed to do all this stuff, to read all your faxes and emails and telephone calls, landline, cell phones, etc., 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 was given to Israel. Kind of off the table. One of those deals. And then, of course, with one of those deals, you always get a Faustian bargain where you've got to do this and somebody's got to do that. And then, of course, the people who worked in the intelligence agencies in Israel do the same thing a lot of people who work in intelligence agencies everywhere else do. They start their own companies and they leave the service and they take their expertise and take it on the road. See where we're going? A whole bunch of people left the intelligence services and took it on the road. So one company they name in this article, Naris, was formed in Israel in November 1997 by 6 Israelis using money coming from Walden, Israel. And of course, one of those other great books about, the New World Order and the future was Walden too. An Israeli venture capital company. Among the 5 founders was Stanislav Kierman, a husky-bearded Russian who had previously worked for Elta Systems Incorporated, a division of Israeli Aerospace Industries Limited, and he developed advanced eavesdropping stuff. You see where we're going? They called their product Stargate. That they could access communications on virtually any type of network, retain communication data for as long as required, and query and deliver content and data. Now, if you were Rupert Murdoch, and you had to have like a cutting-edge source of information and technology, where would you go to get it? How about from a company like that? You could know anything and everything. And like it says in the article, who's watching the listeners? Nobody. Unless they get caught. And even when they get caught, they sweep it under the rug. They have technology that is basically in corporate private hands that's doing echelon to the highest bidder, the mob, big corporations, private detective agencies, assassins, who knows? And don't be surprised if Murdoch and company was one of them. I wouldn't doubt it in a minute. One of the sidebar articles that go with this is Oxford child sex trafficking probe widens, victims double to 50 girls. This is like systemic all over the world. Then, of course, for those of you who depend on mainstream media, well, you're making a big mistake. This story, 19 things the talking heads on television are being strangely silent about. And as sometimes I would joke about Kim Kardashian and whatever little problem she had, I heard one last week where she's actually thinking about getting into politics. And people are probably dumb enough to vote for her because it's a popularity contest. Strange things are happening to the sun. That's number one. There was a storm that had a height of 125,000 miles, roughly half the distance between the Earth and the Moon, with hot gases whipped up to a speed of 186,000 miles an hour. Like, baby, that's a hot one. There's any tornado you could ever think. That's something that just take the Earth like a ping pong ball and fling it. But that's not news. Fukushima, that's the one I concentrated on because the weather on the sun really doesn't affect us to the point it's going to cancel our vacations. Fukushima, the worst nuclear disaster in human history, is far from over. Reactor number 4 has a pool, and this pool holds spent nuclear reactor fuel, 460 tons. Not that that's important. An earthquake of 7 on the Richter scale could collapse the structure. Let's see if I can find my structure. This is the baby right here. This is what the fate of the world depends on, this rickety, old building. that has this reactor pool. It almost looks like a good strong wind would blow it over. What they're trying to do is they're going to try to build a steel frame around it, an L-shaped frame to cover the reactor pool which is here. That is going to be a monumental task because that is flipping hot. There's no roof on this thing, the radiation's just coming out. If that pool wall breached and the water came out cooling those rods, they would heat very, very quickly, and they would have a giant nuclear fire and they'd explode. The amount of radiation that would come out of that is 200 times what happened at Chernobyl, and that was no picnic either. This is a diagram of how the fallout would go across the Pacific. So Japan's over here, and then it's not too pretty down there. Then it would come across the west coast, blow up the east coast. So this part that blows up the east coast, one of the experts in Boston said it's so bad, even in Boston, she'd be packing her bags and going to South America. The amount of death and mayhem is just beyond belief. And then, because we do conspiracy, one of the authors of one of the articles that came with this started talking about, these massive building projects in China where they're building just cities on top of cities on top of cities on top of cities. Or maybe I'll open it in my email because I got a whole lot more pictures in there. It's just absolutely bizarre that they call them the ghost towns of China. So here we can start looking at some of these pictures that came from the Daily Mail. These are gigantic empty cities. A few cars in the parking lot here to, I guess, look after some basic maintenance. And the author is speculating, not the newspaper author, but the author of some of these alternative media things, is that if this happens, the backup plan is they have to get 40 million people out of Japan like yesterday. And there's no place to send them. Or maybe there is. They've been building these things since long before what happened at Fukushima. So we can imply conspiracy. Like, who builds cities that can hold tens of millions of people, doesn't put any people in them? It doesn't make any sense unless you're expecting something to happen, right? Because it's pre-planned. It's supposed to happen that way. That is food for thought. This baby goes, we're in a lot of trouble, especially us Northern Hemisphere ones. And I think I have a video that goes with Fukushima there, don't I, Aaron?
Moving on to the continuing nuclear crisis in Japan, a radioactive wave is headed toward the United States. Scientists with the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution are tracking debris from last year's Japanese earthquake and tsunami as it makes its way across the Pacific Ocean. That debris, which carries with it extremely high levels of radiation, is currently 186 miles off the coast of Japan and could start lashing the coast of the United States within the year, depending on the currents. Scientists are immediately concerned about marine life being hit with radiation levels millions of times above normal. But by next year, it'll be in our marine food supply, our rain, and our coastal waters. So more than a year after the Fukushima nuclear crisis began, the world is still suffering its effects, with more to come. But despite all that, the Japanese government is reportedly preparing to restart one of its nuclear reactors. This week, the Japanese Prime Minister will meet with cabinet officials to discuss turning on a nuclear reactor in western Japan that's been shut down since the Fukushima crisis began more than a year ago. So why hasn't the world learned the lessons of nuclear power yet, even as radioactive waste is heading toward the U.S. West Coast? Kevin Camps joins me now. He's the radioactive waste watchdog at BeyondNuclear.org. Kevin, welcome back.
Thank you, Tom.
So what is going on here with the Japanese saying, I thought, last time we talked, in fact, I thought that the consensus in Japan was no nukes.
Well, there's strong citizen pressure to keep now 53 of 54 reactors in Japan shut down. There's only one operating commercial reactor in Japan. It's going to shut down in early May. Japan will be a nuclear-free zone, and it's because of the anti-nuclear movement of Japan, the common citizens of Japan who, because of Fukushima Daiichi, don't want those risks in their lives anymore. And what the government and the industry are worried about is if they enter the summer with no reactors online and people's lights are still on, the electricity supply is stable, the air conditioners are working, people are going to start to ask, why do we have these risks in our midst? So the federal government, as you said, is sending their Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry to Fukui Prefecture in western Japan to try to convince the governor there who wants
guys need a nuke
safety upgrades in place before the restart. That's kind of a reasonable request to just get out of the way. And the feds are hinting they may just override him at this point.
Whoa. Can these reactors be made safe?
No, I mean, if you lose electricity from the grid, if you lose the emergency diesels, as happened at Fukushima Daiichi, be it an earthquake and tsunami, be it some other natural disaster, Japan just in recent days was hit by another major storm. So there are many ways you can lose electricity to the safety systems, to the cooling systems.
Right.
And of course you've got...
It could be a tornado in the Midwest.
Floods in Nebraska last summer, which were much more serious than they ever let on at the time.
Yeah. This wave of radioactive waste, or what has become now this, I don't know the word, beachhead or whatever, this just plume, I guess is a pretty good word, that is coming off Japan and heading towards us. What is it? What does it mean?
Well, almost to the day a year ago, Tokyo Electric intentionally released 11,500 tons or 3 million gallons of radioactive water into the ocean on purpose. The federal government of Japan gave them permission. There's recent news media reports that it was under pressure from the United States government, and the excuse at the time...
Why?
The excuse at the time was that Tokyo Electric was out of storage space for radioactive water at the plant, and they had a lot more coming. They were trying to keep the reactors as cool as possible because of the meltdowns. They were clearing away less contaminated water to make room for much more contaminated water to come. That's the decision they made. And that plume, as you said, it's taken a year, but it's now reached Hawaii. Another year from now, it'll probably reach the west coast of the United States. And yes, those are our fishing waters, but the fish happen to move around. There are species of tuna that spend part of their life cycle on the Japanese northeast coast, and they have migrated to the United States already. So where is the food monitoring program? There is no post-Fukushima food monitoring program in place. It was quickly dismantled. We're back to pre-Fukushima radiation monitoring, which could miss a lot.
Get to Amazon.com right now and buy a Geiger counter? Is that our food monitoring program? You're on your own, Charlie?
In Japan, I just met a woman in New York City who's now an anti-nuclear activist, and her sisters, her nieces and nephews are monitoring their own food, monitoring the food at the elementary school, and bringing in Fukushima refugees. Amazing. So the people of Japan have been thrown onto their own resources to protect themselves.
And the people of the United States, apparently?
Very much so. We see that up and down the West Coast, people getting radiation monitors, even to the point of checking their own food supply.
Yeah. I actually bought, in fact, I brought it in one of the times you were here on the show. You visited the Fukushima plant back in 2010. We just have 30 seconds left. Thoughts on that?
Well, it's a dead zone where I went to, and the wonderful people I met are scattered to the wind across Japan and other countries. I also visited Fukui. I went to a 1,200-year-old Buddhist temple, and they have been a strong leader in the resistance to those reactors that now are slated for restart.
That's great. Kevin, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
No nukes, no people. If we could show our little sheeple magazine here, Aaron. This is what they want us to believe. Radioactive seawater, no cause for alarm. FDA, no need to test the fish in Alaska. Obama speech on nuclear fallout. Radiation is nutritious. AMA, cancer surge not related to increased radiation levels. Many a truth is spoken in jest, and many truths are coming out about this. This is just absolutely horrendous where we are. Make no mistake about it that these accidents, these events, were pre-programmed for a reason, and that's big reason is to reduce the human population. One of the other big stories, Mount Fuji in Japan about to erupt, as if these people aren't going to get enough. Stunning rise in volcanic activity around the world. Global food prices rising. U.S. government debt downgraded again. Oh, we missed that one. Went from AA plus to AA. $500 million to help the IRS implement Obamacare. Go to jail if you offend someone on the internet in Arizona. Arizona, you got to sharpen your pencil. Passport suspended for not paying taxes. So they're putting through a bill through Congress to, I guess, make you a prisoner in your own land. Another sidebar to that is, of course, they prevent you from owning a firearm. Maybe because you're one of those tax protesters who don't believe there really is a law that forces you to pay. Preparations for war in the Persian Gulf. Well, they hem and haw, but they don't really get into that. Mysterious mass deaths of fish, dolphins, whales, birds all over the globe. Federal Reserve monetizing the U.S. debt. Well, you'll figure that one out one quick. That'll be a Fukushima in your own backyard economically. The giant sinkholes that are forming all over the planet. The increase in global earthquakes. The increase in U.S. earthquakes. The evacuation drills at U.S. public school. The strange sounds in the sky. Crazy tornado outbreaks. Obama's disturbing executive order. Those are the 19 things. And we cover them here. That's no big surprise. No big surprise at all. One of the little sidebars that go with this too is like the event in the Gulf of Mexico isn't over either. There's sick fish all over the place. Eyeless shrimp. Fish with open and oozing sores. Crabs with no claws. Imagine going to a restaurant and say, oh yeah, can I get a fish with oozing sores please? And no tartar sauce, I'll just take the pustules. That's what you're going to get anyway, so you might as well ask for it. They did the same thing there. They just stopped monitoring, stopped reporting, pretended it all went away. If we pretend really, really hard, it'll all go away because no one's going to ask any questions. And of course, one of the big things we can do is we celebrate Earth Day. And of course, with Earth Day, we get the Earth Day Google Doodle. And you get these nice pretty flowers and everybody can celebrate. And then I find out that Earth Day, not that I took much notice ever of Earth Day because I just thought it was some kind of invented communist holiday, really is an invented communist holiday because it's Lenin's birthday. And that's not John Lennon, that's Vladimir Lenin, one of the founding fathers of the Soviet Union. So of course, one of the big places this is supposed to happen is New York City, the Big Apple. Apple maybe from the Garden of Eden, whatever, but I picked the Big Apple to look at the news. I look at the New York Daily News. I see this picture for Earth Day, making Earth Day in the Big Apple, and then I look at the bottom there and we know this is the hot zone for what's going to be happening. This is the Middle East. We have Saudi Arabia, you got, Iran and company over on the other side under the clouds. This is where it's going to happen. Of course, they have the typical numbers, 20, 42. I like to play with those numbers. Comes from this paragraph, 20 million Americans held environmental rallies across the country, spawning the creation of an environmental protection agency to clean up water, yada yada. Exactly 42 years later, as New York celebrates Earth Day on Sunday, the environment has improved. So I take those numbers and plot them on a map. And of course that takes me to Saudi Arabia here, which is in the purview of that map. What are the odds? The numbers take me to what the picture says. So what is the importance, perhaps, of this image? It's a place nobody ever goes to. It's in the sand. It's called Al-Waqaba, an ancient site. They don't describe what's important about the ancient site. And then there's a Google link to something called 250, but we really don't know what 250 is. It's along Route 50. This is a picture of the nearest town. Looks quite cute as the rains come around. But this is where 250 is at A, and this is where our coordinates are. So I start to wonder, well, maybe the Israeli planes are going to start flying down the Red Sea and cut across Saudi Arabia at that point, which would be down here on the attack map. Everybody expects them to come over the top, on the Turkish-Syrian border, crossing Jordan through Saudi Arabia or Iraq and hitting the Iranian targets. But if you came through Saudi Arabia and you started attacking a little bit from the south, well then basically you're overflying the American fleets and American resources. And then When Iran shoots back, they got to shoot in their general direction. So when you see a whole pile of missiles coming at U.S. carrier task forces, you don't know that they're looking for something from Israel. You just don't know. It could be coming for you, so you have no choice but to shoot back. And shoot back they will. And that's how we get a bigger, broader war that is still coming down the trail. Maybe this summer. There's a book out about Obama's push to implement eco-tyranny. Meteorologist Brian Sussman blows the whistle on the president's scheme. Not that people don't know about that, but how the Bureau of Land Management is just basically taken over the whole country. Hundreds of millions of acres with all kinds of like cute sounding things. Our vision, our values, 130 to 140 million acres, disappeared. Nearly 1/3 of all the nation's federal land, 700 million acres, is owned by the federal government. That's all part of the Gaia philosophy. The United Nations Global Committee of Parliamentarians on Population and Development have meetings to espouse this sort of thing, and then we get to the warm and fuzzy feelings where, you know, we just take over everything for the good of a Marxist-Leninist state. And that's what gets us to Earth Day being on Lenin's birthday. The first person who described climate change as heralding the extinction of the human race was Frederick Engels, the co-author of the Communist Manifesto. So they knew how to do it. It's like the soft punch to the underbelly to get you to go down. And then when you go down, they kick the living crap out of you. Mainstream media leaves out a lot of things, like the 49 NASA scientists who write a letter disputing climate change. So it's a load of crock. It needs a lot further study, and they don't think NASA should be attaching their name to any of this stuff because basically at best it's just a harebrained scheme or a very, very bizarre theory that isn't being proved by facts. Most of the facts and data they presented are manipulated. They've been caught many times with manipulated data. So why do it? Because it's communism at its best. We're taking over everything for the benefit of the human race. And I guess in case I forget, we have posted a documentary in the video section called Transformation, because they're taking over you too. Very, very important. Transformation is about that stuff we talked about before with Singularity, the Singularity Project, where they want to hook you up to the mainframe computer so that you can just go along. When did we do this? 2011, August. So if you look up Singularity Project, the end of mankind as we know it on our website, you see some of the things that they wanted to do. You know, this whole point of man evolving is a load of crap anyway, as we've said in the creation myth, but they believe in this stuff and they want to go to the next step. The next step is they plug you in. Time magazine picking dates about when the singularity is going to happen. Movies going out on the transcendent man. The singularity is near. So this is stuff that we have to resist with every little bit of power that we can muster to say, no, we don't want this. I'll probably be going into this a little more next week in detail with how a lot of the espionage that they do, that they can, you know, just kind of put you on a shit list or a non-shit list depending on what your thoughts are, because they'll have every thought you've ever written or spoken stored in a central database, so that if you get out of the mold a little bit, that you can be maybe shaped up with a little treatment, or maybe not, where they just pull the plug out of your mainframe and turn you off. That's what's on the horizon if they get away with this stuff. Some of them think it's great. They want to be like a living cyborg forever, or as close to forever as they can get. There's a lot of deeply religious writings from a long time ago that get into this as well, and I have to study them because I've never heard of some of these texts before, and they're very new to me. But that was one of the objectives, was to build their own man. And that's a very ancient text that goes back thousands of years. The real cost of the carbon tax, of course, is to basically bankrupt companies and individuals, which is all part of the Communist Manifesto, to suck every dime out of your pockets and give it to a centralized Politburo for their fun and profit. As an example of how the centralized Politburos work, not that ours are any better than China's, but a story did come out of China about a British businessman, Neil Heywood, who was murdered by the wife of a member of the Chinese Politburo. This is heavy stuff, really heavy stuff. President Obama was informed immediately of this. It was one of the hottest intelligence coups they've had in a long time, they say. Or maybe there's some other details. But the murder suspect, Gu Kelai, also in the past, in her history, ordered a plane to be blown up, killing 112 people. She wanted to get rid of a woman who was very critical about the criminality going on in her family and with the business dealings they were doing in the Communist Party. So they hired someone to blow up the flipping plane. And this is still being swept under the rug in China. Some activists in the United States have posted a lot of this stuff online to kind of bring some justice. Chinese have attacked that website to try to give them a denial of service. But once it starts to get out and get spread around, it gets out and gets spread around. But the police chief of the area, Wang Lejun, walked into the U.S. consulate and told officials about how this guy was murdered. So at least there was one good dude there. The gentleman who was in the Politburo, of course, it didn't work out so well from him, because with the new, not so much an election, but reshuffling of the government, he might have gotten a very plum position. And that is no longer available to this guy. Thank God for that. His name was Bo Xilai. And he's under arrest too. The plane involved was China Northern Airlines Flight 6136, crashed into the sea by the port city of Dalian, where this guy was the mayor in May of 2002. The black box kind of went missing. This happens a lot. They never told you anything much about the people on the plane, which is a classic profile of what they do today. They just give you a little bit of junk, or you really have to search tooth and nail just to get a list. I had to do that with the Pakistan air crash that just happened recently too. Very difficult thing. The names are all very alien to me because I'm not familiar with some of these people. Picked out a couple to play with. I'll see what I can come up with. Most of the YouTubes, of course, are in the indigenous languages and I don't understand them, so if they've picked up on a conspiracy, how or why, it's outside of my ability to comprehend at this time. They try to, of course, pin this disaster on a former member of the secret police, that he was trying to commit suicide and setting the plane on fire, but that was dismissed and he was determined to be a scapegoat. So it's the same plan all the time. You got your patsy, you got the corrupt officials in the top. Seemingly what was going to happen is they were going to siphon off $1 billion out of the country for these politicians, with Mr. Heywood participating in this. He asked for a bigger cut. They said no. He threatened to expose what they were going to do. His services were no longer required. And they think he was poisoned. They cremated his body the next day. There was no autopsy. Chinese authorities claimed he died of alcohol poisoning. British officials said he had a heart attack. So even the British government was even hiding and covering up, because they do this all the time. They don't want you to recognize the pattern that they do this sort of thing. But at least this one they nailed right on the head. 11 other people were arrested in this as well. The Pakistan Boeing 737 that exploded, I feel that's kind of a similar type of thing. You do a mass murder, you want to kill one person, you make it look like, you know, the plane just crashed, all kinds of, no mechanical error was one of the common things I saw. And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, the fuel tanks were on fire in the sky and it was an explosion. Well, that kind of like just completely goes against the observable facts. So why does the lame duck media report the BS story without getting down to the brass tacks? People saw it catch fire. They saw it explode. But it's still denied. But the evil is so deep and so pervasive. Maybe even the fires of Armageddon won't clean it up or atone for it. This small article, How Britain Covered Up Its Colonial Crimes, deals with the British Empire in Malaysia and Kenya. How Kenyans were detained and tortured in the Mau Mau Rebellion. Few of them have been able to sue the British government. British authorities systematically either burnt or secretly hid thousands of documents which showed their excesses. See, they do this all the time. Intelligence reports on the elimination of enemies in 1950s Malaya are basically documents of war crimes. This is what we do. There are no good guys. We are not the good guys. Government is evil, a terrible evil that has to be kept in a tight leash. We talk about the torture and murder of Mau Mau insurgents. One case talks about a man who was roasted alive. Britain's forcibly removed islanders from Diego Garcia. We talked about this on a previous show. Documents showing how Guyana, post-independence leader, was toppled in a coup in 1966 that was orchestrated from the CIA. So much for their belief in democracy. The Batang Kali massacre in Malaya on December 12, 1948. British Army rounded up people, 24, at a rubber estate, unarmed villagers, shot them all to death and set their village on fire. One intelligence report that they were able to get a hold of claimed that Barack Obama Sr. fell into the wrong hands and that he was detained and may have been tortured during the Mau Mau uprising. That's a very interesting little point. They don't want anyone to get their hands on any material that might embarrass Her Majesty's government. So a lot of these files were destroyed either by burning and then breaking up the ashes, or by putting them in weighted crates and dropping them into the ocean very far off the coast, because they know this was politically very, very hot, and they don't want anyone to know anything about anything. I used to work with a guy who was a soldier in Malaya back in the happy days, and now I know why men drink a lot, because of the sins they've committed on behalf of the state. It's just hard to even fathom that you do these things. Another one is, why don't soldiers talk about what they did in the war? How do you come home and tell your family that you put people up against the wall and shot them all, or you roasted people alive? Kind of takes away that illusion that you're the good guy. And how does the media sit on their duff and cover up stuff like this so that they can do it again and again and again and again and again? Until we break that cycle, we're doomed. And that cycle may doom us when we let these leaders take us into the next one. One of the other psyops they're doing, of course, is this Trayvon Martin shooting. They never show you his picture. Mary sent me his picture. This is what he looks like now, or it looked like now, from his Facebook page. This is him. Okay? So he's not this like 12-year-old looking guy from this old picture that the media puts around. He's 6'3". Looks like a gangbanger, making the gangbanger signs. He's got arms on him like a tree trunk, tattoos. Like, you get in a fight with this guy, going to take a few good men to put him down on the ground. So, this benign, childlike creature, no way. He was caught with stolen property, caught with burglar tools. Who says just because, crooks gotta eat, they can go to the 7-Eleven. Hey, I'm gonna have my Skittles and something to drink, and then I'm gonna break into a couple of houses and steal some stuff. They gotta eat. You think just because you buy Skittles, you can't be a crook? And it isn't a race thing. Here's another classic criminal. Trayvon's mother says, he's an angel from heaven. This is Al Capone, and there's Al Capone's mother. There's my boy Al. He's my son. Biggest mobster, or one of the biggest mobsters America ever made in the classic days. We used to laugh about that as children. There's, There's his mother at church. You know, there's my boy Al. He gave me money. Just takes me a long time to wash all the blood off it. It's not a race thing. It's a crime thing. He's a crook. Crook ran into an idiot, and the idiot shot him, and the crook lost. Don't be a crook. A little bit of information on the Gareth Williams investigation. One of the stories breaking in the papers today was he was trying to get out of the espionage business. Didn't like it. Something was wrong. His sister said at the inquest he was trying to get out. That adds a whole new spin to the perceived facts. Now we know why his employers didn't report him missing for 8 days. That's almost implying some serious motive. And you look at some of the small little details, and that's the hard part, is to look at the very small little details. It takes a lot of time to go through it, and they cover things up and don't tell you the whole story. But he did go shopping. They said he went shopping. They said he was being followed a week before he disappeared. They called it hard surveillance. That's something that should really be making you sweat a little bit. So if you're being followed with hard surveillance and you're a spy, well, you'd be calling your boss and saying like, hey, you know, this country's after me, or this one's after me, or that one's after me. They'd be giving you more security, moving you to another safe house. Things would be happening. Even from his own perspective, he should have been moving his own butt to another safe house. But he returned from the United States in 2010 on August the 11th from his sojourn or whatever happened to him there. And then August the 15th, they say he went shopping. August the 23rd, they found his decomposed body in this padlock bag. And then that little thing of where he went shopping. He went shopping at Harrods, which is just a big department store. It means nothing, or it means everything. Why does Harrods mean anything? Because Dodi's father owned Harrods. One of the biggest intelligence ops that probably happened was the whacking of Princess Diana. Did he find something out at GCHQ that just turned his crank to go, we killed Diana. I'm working for the guys who killed Diana. All my efforts in mathematics to try to protect my country, to save the world for democracy so we can line people up against the wall in Malaya and shoot the pricks, was for naught. I'm working for the belly of the devil, the beast, and I can't get out. And I know all this stuff. And it's eating me up. So what do you get? A quick pension. Did he go to Harrods to tell them something and then became an asset that they no longer required? So as they say in the news articles from the family, the people with the dark arts came and took him out and did a cleaning of the apartment. Could very, very, very well be true. And maybe he even came across their ultimate secret. So now we have another big secret out. Of course, the Secret Service parties hardy. Secret Service guys go to Colombia. They're picking up all these young girls, taking them back to their hotel rooms. All kinds of sex for money. They don't pay. Becomes a big scandal. Lots of guys are being cleaned out. In a way, that's kind of funny. Where's one of our guys here? This chap here was a Secret Service supervisor. Seemingly he was looking at Sarah Palin's behind or something like that, and made fun of her or teased her, and then she put on a Facebook page that she was glad to see him get the boot because he's an idiot. And I guess that's what we get, protecting the world and the president. See, the president, whether you like him or not, still the chief commanding officer of the American military, still got the nuclear briefcase, still the launch guy for Armageddon when it comes. You can't have a bunch of crackerjacks guarding this guy, getting drunk, screwing around with all kinds of women who could be foreign agents, stuff like that. Like that is the most serious thing you have to protect. But of course, they always leave out little details. And as I'm reading the small details, when they start talking about the Army, 10 military service members. Yeah, I heard about that. And then this little one that I never heard anywhere. And as many as 20 women had their security clearances revoked. Now, I don't think those are referring to the prostitutes. 20 women had their security clearances revoked. 20 women. I haven't seen one word, period, about any of the women working for the State Department, the Secret Service, or the military being brought up even by gender, number, or definitely not by name. So this wasn't just a boy thing. They were having like a Roman orgy toga party there with anybody and everybody, which is just typical at police college or in the military. You want to see some good parties in Ontario? You go to the closest town near the Ontario Police College, Aylmer, Ontario. There must be legends carved into the bar stools of every facility down there. Legends. Makes Animal House look like a Sunday school picnic. And it's the same with the military. Don't forget, you want the police and the military to have all the guns too. It makes it easier to control the prostitutes. On a little sidebar, I guess, this is our girl here, Dania Suarez. She's now in hiding or something like that. Now this is something I've never understood from these military guys. Like, they'll eat out of the dog's bowl to get close to this girl, right? And then they want to get information out of some guy, and then they got to torture him and beat him and knock him around or something like that. I think, you know, the toughest Al-Qaeda guy is going to melt in about 10 seconds near her. Even if it takes him a week, he ain't going to last long. And he'll be eating out of the dog's bowl and going, you know, why do I want to wait? Well, she's not a virgin, but, you know, I can have it now. He'll talk. No doubt about it. But this is what we have to wonder about. Some of the details about this Latin American conference that went on is other countries are not too happy with the United States and Barack Obama. They're getting their free trade deal with Colombia, and then they give you all the bullshit at the end. It'll generate jobs at home. How's that? Every free trade deal takes away jobs and sends it somewhere else where somebody works for 10% of what they'd be getting at home. And you end up losing a job. No problem. A lot of these countries wanted Cuba to attend, and America keeps saying no, so does Canada. So there's a little bit of trouble there. Mexico and Colombia were big on that. Argentine President Cristina Fernandez left early because she wants, the status of the Falkland Islands, the Malvinas, to be recognized. And Obama made one of those George Bush screw-ups, calling them the Maldives. Different islands, different ocean. The ALBA bloc of nations, Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Nicaragua, and some Caribbean nations, say they will not attend future summits without Cuba's presence. All in all, it wasn't a happy. Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff called it a monetary tsunami coming. Brazil had criticism of the U.S. and other rich nations' expansionist monetary policy, sending a flood of funds into developing nations, forcing up local currencies and hurting competitiveness. So they're not really helping anybody. One of the big complaints I had with the World Bank and things like that is when you're giving somebody charity, you're trying to help them out, give them the loans in their own or in US dollars and let them pay back in their own currency. That's a gift. You'll get something back, probably not as much, but you'll really help them out. But they don't do that. They give you the loans in US dollars, devalue your currency, and then you almost got to pay back twice as much plus interest. That's a racket. The economic hit mankind. People are protesting Monsanto. They're saying they're poisoning farmers. Lawsuits are going on. Well, we know that. They're putting chemicals into the tobacco in South American crops. With Philip Morris' New Front Altria group being at the top. So that's one of the big reasons why, smokers are really getting nailed with the cancer. They're breathing in all these poisonous chemicals. The Roundup Ready crap. Genetically modified tobacco and stuff like that. It's not like anything that might have existed in the past that was pure or purer. It's just loaded with stuff. Bad news. And then on the assassination trail, Mr. Breivik is getting his trial. It's just like a monkey circus over there. And the other thing, too, that's just really bizarre about the whole affair, is someone does the math. So the police always come up and say, this explosion was equal to 5 to 10 tons of TNT or 10 to 20 tons of explosive fertilizer slurry. He's driving an Opel Corsa That's not a big car. Its maximum capacity is 285 liters. One barrel is 157 liters. Two barrels in this car would be dragging its bumpers on the ground. There's 9 cubic foot trunk. So the best he could have had is maybe 2 barrels. They say, you know, like you pretty much got the equivalent of 57 barrels of explosives. Where did he put them? So it tells you it's a crock. Stuff was probably under the street. And then a lot of people who look at things and see things start noticing things about him. Photoshop. Can we show the video of Mr. Breivik and see how the man in many different days, many different clothes and whatever looks very photoshopped?
Ja, da er vi klar for å sette rett her. Og da ber jeg om at fotograferingen opphører. Og da ber jeg om at fotografering... 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 Og da ber jeg om at fotografering...
constructed for us, and also testing the sound.
Okay, this is the hole here from Oslo where this bomb went off, and it just seems to be, a little on the large side for a car bomb. Just seems to have, just really blown the living crap out of things. It's just a little too hard to believe you could pack that much stuff up in a car, and then not have the residual damage around the side of the picture, because if the force is going down as well with that much, it's also got to go around. Just doesn't make sense. And this is a picture of Breivik. It's a shame I forgot to get the one. This is cut, and it's taken off a surveillance TV monitor. So instead of getting the actual picture from the DVR or video that recorded this, they just took a picture of the monitor, and this is supposed to be the evidence they have of him that he's doing this attack. And of course he's instantly recognized by the helmet. You don't know who the hell that is. So there's no way you can say that that's Anders Breivik. You're just assuming. But I find it, when you see it and you see the name of the monitor on the bottom, that this is a picture of something from a monitor and not actual evidence retrieved from the computer that's housing the photos, makes you doubly suspicious that this is fixed. But I guess the helmet's to cover up the Photoshop on his hair. And the other thing that's just weird is that they have this flash sequence going off in the courtroom. We have allegedly two cameras, but the flashes aren't visible from one camera to the other. They just don't exist in the same time frame. Very weird. Other things that are weird, of course, is Israel's gearing up for Armageddon, as they say. A TV station in Israel, one of their major TV stations, Channel 10, has sent a reporter into the air bases to interview their pilots and spend weeks with them on their preparations for going on the global jihad and taking on Iran. They're taking this very, very seriously. Of course, that's probably story number 20 on the 19 stories you're not supposed to know. They are taking it very seriously and getting ready. Iran halts oil flow to Germany one day after Spain, so Iran isn't just going to sit around and just say, keep kicking me, I like it. The talks are still going on. They're talked about being constructive, but then we were talking with Japan on December the 7th, a day that will live in infamy as well. The Pentagon has a successful plan with hundreds of Tomahawks deployed near Iran. So you count them all up with the carrier task forces, the Abraham Lincoln, the Enterprise, and the submarine Georgia, and they got 430 Tomahawk missiles ready to kick their keisters. An Israeli soldier, an officer, a senior officer, was caught smacking a Palestinian with a gun butt, his rifle butt, and at least they did something about that, unlike G20 protesters who complain about things. We can complain about Israel to say this or that. They caught the guy doing something wrong, consequences came. He was identified and punished. Took a long time to do that with similar actions from our police in the G20 until the major media held their nose to it. But part of Bible prophecy is too, the world turns against Israel. They got to do something that's really nasty to get that to happen, maybe getting caught on 9/11. EU reports, this is an older story, but it's important, it's from January. EU reports on a call for action against the Israeli settlements. Of course, that's going nowhere. India launches their Agni 5 long-range missile that can take a warhead deep into China. They're getting ready. Of course, nobody criticizes them too much. The Philippines and the U.S. are getting into a heavy-duty war games off the Philippines, going toe-to-toe with China, because China is claiming large parts of the ocean that are really other people's territorial waters for its own, so they can get the oil. That's one of the things we're going to fight about, is this oil. North Korea this morning on the BBC talking about, you know, how they're coming into South Korea to do basically the equivalent of Operation Gladio and kick butt. Egypt scraps the Israeli gas supply deal because they say they haven't been paid for months by the company that's supplying the gas to Israel. That is a tough one. Protests again in Tahrir Square. They passed a law to say that Mubarak's henchmen can't run for public office, but the law probably won't apply in time for the next election, so it's basically a waste of time. One of the funny ones is one of the candidates, Hazim Salah Abu Ismail, is ineligible because his mother is an American citizen. Doesn't work in America for the president, that's for sure, because he's a citizen, but he's not native born. Then one of the funny ones, to show you the kind, benevolent culture of the UK. So not only put you up against the wall and shoot you and torture you and burn you alive, when we help you save your country for democracy, as they did with the UK, they put economic sanctions on Egypt to help smooth this out. And of course that means they took £85 million worth of Egyptian assets 13 months ago. The UK's Treasury Asset Freezing Unit. And there's still £85 million worth of stuff in the freezer. So the Egyptians are saying, okay, like, Mubarak's gone, when do we get our money back? And then they get the Maxwell Smart, huh? How do we get our money back? Huh? What money? You get money back? No, you can't have any money back. You see, the Treasury is only responsible for freezing the assets. It does not have the power or authority to repatriate the assets. So basically, in a nutshell, it just comes out to one thing. You're screwed. They come in, they take your money, goodbye. I never heard of that little one before. How many assets has the UK Treasury Freezing Department frozen? Why do they have a deficit? They're stealing all the money from other people in the world. It's just unbelievable. Lockerbie bomber's health deteriorates drastically, so I guess now that we have a regime change, he's not getting protected anymore, so life expectancy for al-Maghraqi, or however we pronounce his name, is probably not going to be too good. They got to kill him because he knows too much about what really happened with Lockerbie. A Hollywood publicist who claimed to be a CIA undercover agent chokes to death on a deli meat sample. Michael Sands choked to death at Gelson's deli counter in Century City when this object became stuck in his throat. He was 66-year-old, pronounced dead at the scene. His client list included Michael Reagan, the son of President Ronald Reagan, Christy Swanson, Britney Spears, former husband Kevin Federline. He also represented Beverly Hills plastic surgeons, lawyers, and Hollywood private eyes. Plastic surgeons really come to the tops with me, because I'm thinking maybe they did some work on somebody to help them escape. People fighting in Bahrain with the Formula car race over there. You're in a police state, what do you expect? I wouldn't watch these things, wouldn't participate in these things. They're just, you know, pagan spectacles at best at times, and they're being used against us to take our money, keep us enslaved intellectually. The Google Doodle of the day, I guess we have to get into that one before I run out of breath. This one is very, very pertinent. The big thing is, it's just the zipper and the zipper inventor, Gideon Sunback. Name that no one really paid any attention to, but everybody uses the product. But it's not so much the zipper or Sunback that means anything. The lead word, of course, is Gideon. If you got a free Bible in school when you were young, it was Gideon's Bible. They don't want you to get those anymore because you might read some of the books in there and know what they're doing. When you touch the doodle, it comes apart, it unzips, it splits in half. And then we get a blank page. So I feel lucky. You know, I mentioned that the zipper commonly secures men's trousers. Pulling down the zipper would have the phallic symbolism, like in the weapons of war in Revelation. And who is tapped for destruction? Iran and Israel are on the list. And that is where Gideon comes in, the book of Revelation. Gideon means destroyer, mighty warrior, or feller of trees. The Americans have proudly announced they have 430 Tomahawk missiles ready for the assault. Of course, the Tomahawk is an axe, the feller of trees. But that is only the beginning. Gideon had visions, miracles. The angel was one. He was to judge the Hebrews. Israel turned away from God after 40 years of peace. The other two miracles were the miracles of the fleece, to show Gideon that he was truly representing God. He was ordered to destroy the idol Baal, the symbol to the goddess Asherah, the lady of the sea. And Urigatik, the reference to Ugarit, is an ancient port in where else Syria. Gideon gathered an army from several tribes. In the modern era, we would call it a coalition, or NATO. Of extreme importance, they crossed the river Jordan and entered the valley of Jezreel. The southwestern portion of the valley of Jezreel borders on what is known as the valley of Megiddo. You can't know prophecy without knowing Megiddo, especially the Greek name for it, Armageddon. The Battle of Armageddon is the revelation. Mount Megiddo was split in two in the battle. The zipper splits the page in two. Gideon assembled his warriors. There were many, many warriors, and he had to send most of them home. They sent home the men who were afraid. They had tests on how men drank water to see if they lapped it up like a dog. In the end, he had 300 warriors. They were given a horn, a shofar, a clay jar with a torch inside. Maybe it implies something like a weapon concealed inside, something like a missile today. Perhaps they approached the enemy camp, blowing these horns, shouting one of the most famous phrases in Christendom, a sword for the Lord and Gideon. That is probably one of the most important facts of it, because it's coming back again. A sword and the Lord for Gideon. And Gideon is usually recognized as Israel. There was an operation of Gideon as well, where they went after the Munich terrorists from 1972 and took them all out. There's another very real reference to Gideon. The Gideon is the word. It's not so much the picture or the zipper or whatever, it's the root words. One of the other root words, of course, is Sund. That's a location in many Scandinavian countries. I just picked Finland because there's more people living there. They have a coat of arms like castle. It's brown like sand. Everything's brown on it, even the flag, rather unusual. Does that motif represent Iran, or perhaps the castle that has to be stormed? The word Bach is brook, crossing the Jordan River, crossing the sand of the desert. Is that included in this doodle? And then, of course, this is a famous painting of Gideon. Sunback died on the 21st of June. Is that the date for the attack that they're sneaking up on us? It's difficult to say. We just do our best to look at some of these images and break them down so that at least you have a fighting chance to understand what's coming in the revelations of the military-industrial complex, as it is Google, because these doodles are important. The computers nowadays can break any encryption code. They've got them big and fast enough. There's nothing that can be held a secret for long. The only way to do it is implied. We have to use a knowledge base to try to figure things out and try to understand what's going on and interpret, as opposed to Let the machine do your thinking for you. And this is where we're very sadly lacking, and maybe that's where Gareth Williams was special. In Britain, they had some kind of dude here. He was some nut bar doctor, Dr. George Hibbert. He was the guy that was hired by all these municipalities or almost anyone to make decisions on who gets to have children and keep their children. What they did is they put you in like a Big Brother house, and they monitored everything you did, everywhere. Every phone call you made, everyone you talked to, you were under complete and total surveillance. And it didn't matter what you did, in his perspective it was wrong, and they took your children all the time. Well, then they find out the guy's a twit, and all the things that he was doing were not medically sound. He's being sued. The only trouble is for the children who were put up for adoption is their parents can't get them back. And this is what the Big Brother state is doing for us. It's just disgusting in every way, shape, and form. These people are mad, beyond mad, and the only reason they can do what they do is because we let them. We can't let them anymore. The time has come to say enough is enough. You got to stand up and scream from the rooftops that you're not going to take it anymore. One of the ways too is help us support this show. Click the donate button, send something here in an envelope. The farther and faster we can take it, maybe the more time we can buy to say Mount Megiddo is not going to split. So maybe 99.9% of the world are doorknobs and they don't even know what Mount Megiddo is. And they don't know who Gideon is. And they don't know anything. They don't know what a nuclear cruise missile is. But it's the responsibility of the people who know, the people who can do things, to look after the people who can't. Part of the Christian faith is to be the good shepherd. To be the good shepherd is we have to look after the flock. The flock is dumb, pretty much useless, and pretty much asking for what's coming. But that doesn't remove us from our responsibility as good shepherds to try to make sure that we take care of the flock. There's a law going through in Delaware tomorrow, Wednesday, where they're trying to pass a law to take away the powers from the county sheriff. Take away his arrest powers, so that he will no longer be the senior law enforcement authority. And to replace these sheriffs with the United States Marshals, agents of the federal government. That is a very, very serious issue. It's not like it hasn't happened before. We've got some background material on the history of that we can go into next week too. You lose your sheriff, you're in a lot of trouble. Because it's just the federales after that. I don't think we the people got the guts to stand up and say no. When it comes toe to toe, we'll find out. The big test will be on. After economic collapse, it'll probably be easy. That's a terrible battle to lose. Because the elected sheriffs are part of we the people. And they keep the Constitution in balance. But a lot of people probably don't know that. They just see somebody in a uniform, and it's just the same as somebody else in a uniform. But when you split the hairs, it's the sheriff that can save the country, we the people, and the Constitution from the oppressors, who are agents of the federal government, who were supposed to stay boxed in that 40-mile square area around Washington. They have no authority ever to escape from their states' rights were supreme. There's only one problem. The states lost the Civil War. And the federal government took over and has kept trying to take over the whole damn shooting match. And one day they just very might. The communist elements, fascist elements, police state elements, basically the large corporations will take advantage of you. We'll get into the middle class next week. Hopefully I wanted to do a lot of these older religious studies on where we come from and the creation around us. We'll have to get into that. I got a little more research to do on that. I'll try to blog it very soon. But this is where it happens. Conspiracy Cafe, that channel in downtown Toronto. There is nothing like it on the face of the earth. You can Google it, you can doodle it 6 ways from Sunday. Nobody splits hairs on the innuendo of the New World Order or prophecies like we do here. We have a very close team around us. We work very, very hard. We'll be here again Thursday next week. And the show's available here every night. And what little portions you miss, you'll just have to go to the podcasters and watch what sneaks out of the hour. Every little bit's important. You can change the world, you can change the channel, and it's over for the New World Order. Easiest battle ever won. We don't need the horns. We don't need the soldiers. We just need you to change the channel. You change your destiny, and you're free. So anyway, thanks for coming out. We'll be here next week, Thursday. Good night.